welcome to today's session. We'll be going through a Bachelor of Speech Pathology. That is a newly introduced course and has been brought in 2020. So today I'll introduce you the two academics that we have. So we have Dr. Belinda Kennedy, who is the Director of Academic Programming for Speech Pathology. And we also have Dr. Leah Dark, the Academic Course Advisor for Speech Pathology. So I'm going to just hand over them today so they're able to do the presentation for the course.
Thanks so much, Lauren. And I'll just pop on the presentation now. Well, welcome everybody, and we're very pleased to have you joining us this afternoon. And my name is Dr. Belinda Kennedy. I'm the Director of Academic Program for Speech Pathology, and we're delighted that you're so interested in our program and joining us to hear just a little bit more about what we have to offer. So there's two of us here for the session this afternoon. As I said, I'm Belinda, the Director of Academic Program, and joining me is Dr. Leah Dark, who's the Academic Course Advisor. Leah's just saying hello just now. So obviously you're interested to know more about speech pathology, and we'll just go back a second. So speech pathologists, we work with children, adults, families and communities, and our role is really to support people to develop their optimal skills in communication and in swallowing. And we're also looking at people's mealtime experiences as well. So a lot of people think about speech pathologists working with speech or communication, but swallowing is another important area in terms of what we do. There's so many different areas that you can work in as a speech pathologist. When you graduate, you may find that you're working in health settings such as community organisations, private practices, for example, hospitals and also schools. And there's a number of different areas that you may find that you're working in. So there's lots of different opportunities. So I'd just like to spend perhaps a minute talking about our program. It's a 4-year undergraduate program. In the first year, if you have a look at the circle on the right-hand side of the screen, in our first year, there's a number of what we call core interprofessional units where you learn some of those really foundational skills that you'll need to be a health professional. Then in second year, we really start to build on some of those really foundational skills for being a speech pathologist. And that will be the knowledge that you need, but also some of those practical skills about how to work with people and families and communities. In the third year of our program, that's where you have a really exciting opportunity to be involved in clinical placements off-site. So we'll be working very closely with what we call our industry partners. So that will be local hospitals, community health centres, disability organisations, private practice organisations, to provide you with some hands-on experiences working with clients and families. So that's a very exciting part of our program as well. Then in fourth year, again, you'll continue your clinical learning, your academic learning with us, and there's opportunities for students who are interested and are doing very well academically to go into an honours stream, and students who perhaps are not so interested in the honours or the research stream. For you, there's an opportunity to take up some electives, and those electives are areas that are very closely related to speech pathology. They'll complement your skills as speech pathologists, but allow you to develop your particular interests. So that's something quite exciting about our program here at Western Sydney University. There's some other real strengths that we have, I think, to offer. The program is taught by certified practicing speech pathologists, which is important. Our approach as a new program is to be quite innovative. So we've looked very closely at where the speech pathology profession is heading in the future And we're really looking at preparing our graduates, not just with those skills that you'll need to work with children and adults and people across the lifespan now, as soon as you graduate, but we're also looking at preparing you with skills for the future. We'd really like to include in our program, and our plans are to have new ways to think about learning. So we have the way that we've developed our program, you'll have an opportunity to focus on looking at, for example, language skills, speech skills, voice, stuttering, all of those within one unit of study. So lots of exciting and interactive learning experiences for you. We're also very much focused on bringing to you what's the latest evidence in speech pathology research and practice to make sure that the quality of care that you're able to provide will be very high, but that you will be very well equipped to go out into the workplace and be work ready. We're working hard at the moment to develop some really strong relationships with industry. And by industry, I mean our local hospitals, our private practice managers, our disability services, for example, so that we've got those strong networks, close links between what happens at the university and what actually happens in the field. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for you to apply your skills in practice, but also we'll be asking people from the community, from the professional community of practicing speech pathologists, to come into our program and to help us to develop some learning experiences for you. So we're flexible, we've got a very high quality program, and we'll be very keen to welcome you along. I'll just pop off my screen share now, and perhaps we might have some questions, Lauren.
Yeah, sure. So guys, you should be able to see on the live stream at the bottom there, if you scroll down on the page, there's a box where you can ask questions. So this is a great opportunity now. You have two academics here, and you also have myself, who is a current student. So you can ask questions about, application process, enrollment, and also how, what university might be like or what the course entails. Okay, we don't have any so far. So I can maybe just give a quick run over if in regards to applications and how that process works. So a lot of you may be high school students that are graduating at the end of this year. So it's important to remember, unfortunately, speech pathology isn't included as a early entry program. So you do need to make the application through the University Admission Centre. That is the only application portal you can apply through. And we recommend making that application as soon as possible. It is currently open at the moment, and offers usually tend to be released around January time period, and the course would commence in March, early March next year. And if anyone has any questions about that process, how long it takes, feel free to comment. And we've got some coming through now, so I'll just have a quick check.
Great.
Okay. So we have one question. Is it possible to do placement earlier?
Thank you for that question. And it's great that you're very excited already thinking about placements. Well, what I'll let you know is our external placements start in the third year of our program, but we are doing lots of clinical learning as from year one. So even in year one of the program, we have what we call some dedicated speech pathology units. And during those units, you're learning some of those really practical skills. So thinking about, for example, how you might communicate with adults and children, learning about different types of communication disorders, for example, that you will be treating, and swallowing issues, and also developing some skills thinking about how we go about assessing and also treating children and adults as well. Then in second year, we've got some more clinical type experiences for you, where we'll be involved in what we call simulated learning. So that will be, again, a lot of practice there. We'll have potentially some actors that you may be working with to practice your clinical skills, and really develop those skills that you'll need. It takes time to develop the knowledge that you need and also the practical skills for you to be really able to make the most of those clinical placements. And that's why we've put them in that third year of the program, so that you really have that opportunity. There's a lot of learning that needs to happen, and we'll make sure that there is lots of practical type examples for you before you reach that third year.
Perfect, thank you for that. We have another question. Is there any subject or area that we are required to work within beforehand?
I'm guessing that means sort of in your high school studies, perhaps. So whether you've selected any particular subjects as your electives that would stand you in good stead. We do just require 2 units of English, which is very common across all of our health science programs, and that can be any 2 units of English. It certainly is helpful to have some background in one of the sciences that might be on offer at your school, so biology or physics or chemistry or even PDHPE, but it's not in fact an entry requirement. So in our first year, we offer quite a range of courses, and as you heard Belinda say, they're our interprofessional subjects that all of our health science students take. And a good portion of those are focused on our foundational science skills. So things like anatomy and physiology and understanding how the body works. And then we will build speech pathology specific knowledge on top of that basis for you. So definitely English, sciences are great, but there's no formal prerequisites for coming into the program in that way.
Great, thank you. The second question that we have, and this might be one that I can answer, do we have any course prerequisites or assumed knowledge subject for HSE? So I think Dr. Dark just covered that as well, where she mentioned that there is assumed knowledge, so that would be the 2 units of English or in a unit of science. However, we don't have prerequisites. So you may not have done biology or a science in high school. English is compulsory during a HSE, so you all would have done English. But if you haven't done it, it's not preventing you from applying for the course. So when I went through, we had to have them, unfortunately, but now we no longer have them, which is great for you guys when applying. And someone has asked for the guaranteed ATAR. So because it is a new course and how ATARs are determined are based on the previous year that go through and the lowest ATAR mark that last person to gain entry into the course received. So you may have seen on our website or had a look in the course guidebooks if you've got them from school. It just says under ATAR new. So we don't have that ATAR requirement as of yet, but it's important to remember we do have quite a lot of people applying for a Bachelor of Speech Pathology. So it is a little bit more competitive. So we are or do recommend probably around the 80 to 90 ATAR bracket. That's usually where it does sit. So it is important to remember when you are applying that you are also competing against current university students and also mature age students. So you guys are assessed in the same group. So hopefully that answers that question. I'll just move on to one of the seconds.
So I think what you're saying there, Lauren, is just really try and do your best, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously, and if you haven't had that assumed knowledge, it's not going to impact the application. And obviously, you are recommended and encouraged to pick subjects in Year 12 that you do enjoy. And obviously, if you're enjoying your classes, you want to attend them, you're going to perform quite well in them. So that will, help you with your ATAR.
Absolutely. And perhaps we could mention at this stage that with our course, with being a speech pathologist, there's a number of different components. So obviously communication is really important, and that's why we will focus on both your verbal communication, but also your written communication skills as you progress through the course. There's obviously, because we're working sometimes with people who have had some neurological or biological issues or medical issues that have resulted in communication or swallowing issues. So that science part and learning a little bit about anatomy and neurology is important, and that's part of our program as well, to think about how that relates to speech pathology and the nerves and the muscles that that you need to be able to communicate and to swallow effectively. And there's also that other component, which is really about, I guess, that the psychology or the sociology of working really effectively with people and with families. So it's a very well-rounded, I think, program that looks at each of those areas. And if you're someone who has an interest in communication, but also, you know, some interest in science, but that sociology, I think it's well suited to you. But particularly, I think, if you enjoy working with people.
Thank you for that. So we've got our couple more questions. So we've got one asking what campus is the course available at. So this course is only offered at the Campbelltown campus. That's just because of the facilities that we need. So obviously, Dr. Kennedy mentioned before that you do some anatomy units, and with that you do require certain lab settings. So it is only offered at the Campbelltown campus at this stage, but you know, maybe potentially in the future it might be available at some others, but at this stage it's just Campbelltown. Someone's asked, how long is the course and do you need a master's degree as well to become a speech pathologist?
No, you don't.
No.
So it's a four-year undergraduate program. There are also master's programs available in speech pathology. At Western, we're offering the undergraduate program, and at the end of the undergraduate program, that's where you apply to be a practicing member of our professional association, which is Speech Pathology Australia, and ready to work. Leah, were you going to add something to that?
No, just the same information you've shared.
Okay, thank you. So the next question we have, what are the two best things about studying this course at Western Sydney University? I'm not quite sure who's best to potentially.
Well, maybe we could do one each. We'll be very diplomatic and share the floor. So
Definitely.
I think it's going to be really hard actually to pick just two. As a student, when I went through speech pathology, I was absolutely amazed at the diversity of the profession and the number of different areas that our profession actually covers. So Belinda was mentioning before that in your studies you get to focus on areas such as speech for both children and adults, language disorders, voice disorders, looking at people who have a stutter, and also people with disabilities or for different reasons who need to use alternative methods of communication. So things like signing and things like picture-based systems or computers that will actually help them talk. And of course, we have this area of swallowing, which not a lot of people recognise that speech pathologists are actually involved in. So for me, I think it's the options that are available to you in your course, but also later on in your career to move into different areas and really expand and broaden your skills. What would you say, Belinda?
Oh, yes, again, I'm trying to pin myself down to one. Well, I think a real strength of our program is that being a new program, we've been able to really look at this program with really fresh and sort of future-focused eyes. And I'll say that Leah and I have been out speaking with managers, for example, from health departments, private practice managers, and we've been talking about our new program and what we're hoping to achieve. And professionals in the community and your potential future employers have been very excited about what it is that we're doing here. For example, you know, in the year 3 and year 4 of the program, we're really going to be focusing on sort of what we call problem-based learning, where you'll be looking at, you know, different cases, you know, with complex issues, really thinking through, you know, what's the best way to assess this person, what's the best form of therapy, you know, what's the latest evidence available for speech pathologists, how could I work effectively, not just as a speech pathologist, but as part of a whole team to make sure that this person is receiving the quality of management that they really need. So I think our focus on, you know, sort of problem-based and really what we call it authentic, because it's real life type clinical experience, and that real link between university and practical experience. That's what we're really focusing on, so that those two things are coming together for you. And I think that's a real strength of our program, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So I'm a current student at Western Sydney. Unfortunately, I'm not in speech pathology, but I am in the science related field. But definitely in regards to speech pathology and all our courses at Western Sydney, we really have this focus on having 60% of your course be about practical application and 40% theory. So we've had a lot of feedback from providers and industry professionals saying that they do like taking our graduates because we actually train you at university and really give you those skills to prepare you for the workforce. So when you come out, you really are equipped, you're familiar with the settings, and the task requires for you when you do graduate, and that obviously helps you quite a lot when you are applying for jobs. So I definitely say there is a very big practical aspect and getting you ready for the outside world, which is great. So we do have another question asking how many applicants did we have for 2020? Unfortunately, we wouldn't have those statistics yet. That would be something that admission kind of look into, and they would keep that. But we do have a lot of people inquiring. So I work at the Course Information Centre, and I do have quite a lot of people calling up, or when I do go out to schools, we do have a lot of expression of interest for that course. So it is one of the more popular courses that we have.
Maybe I could just add to that, just to give that person a little bit of a sense of the size of the cohort perhaps that we've had
definitely
this year. So not about the number of applicants, but how many people actually enrolled in the course. So we started out, I believe, with just over 70, and we now have a solid 65 students in our course. So it's good numbers, and it means we've got nice sized classes for lots of interaction in our group work, but also a manageable number of students so that we can give individualised attention to your studies and your learning as well. So we're really thrilled with that size of group, and hope that we can have that again in future years.
Perfect, thank you. So we've got another question regarding not so much prerequisites, but someone has asked, is biology a big part of the course? I haven't chosen it in year 11 and 12. Do I need to do a bridging course?
Good question. So the short answer is no, you don't need to do a bridging course. So the 2 units that I mentioned in first year, they're called Human Anatomy and Physiology 1 and Human Anatomy and Physiology 2. They've basically been designed to be applicable to students who have no background in science whatsoever. So they take us right back to the level of, what is a cell, and how do cells work in the body and all those kind of things. And then students will work through different systems of the body and learn about all the structures in them, and then how they all work together within a human body. So I think we could safely say that those units are very introductory units, and they would be certainly appropriate for someone who hasn't had a background in science. They are challenging units because it is a challenging area, but the staff in the School of Science who take those units are very, very experienced and very knowledgeable about supporting students who've not had a background in that area. And then in second year, we actually have an opportunity to do a very speech pathology focused look at science in terms of the neurology and the neuroanatomy, and how different systems that are specific to speaking and communication and swallowing work as well. So we take you gradually through the science skills that you need to know.
Great, thank you. Another question we have, what are the range of careers that you can go for with this degree?
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of different directions that you may want to go in. So obviously, people in the first instance are interested in actually being a speech pathologist. So what does that mean? That means that, again, you may be somebody who may, through the course of the program, because our clinical program is set up so that you will have quite a lot of different experiences, so that you'll have an opportunity to work with children, you'll have an opportunity to work with adults and in different settings. So we've got the four quite sizable clinical placements actually that occur through the program. So often people may come into the program and they may think, for example, oh, I'd really like to work with children. But through the course of the program and through their clinical placement experiences, they find that, oh, actually, I really enjoy working with adults, or I'd really enjoy working with children and adults who have a disability, for example. So they develop perhaps a real interest and a passion for a particular part of speech pathology. So what you may do at the end, once you've graduated, you may, for example, go into the private practice sector where you may be seeing either children or adults, or children and adults, for example. You may go to a community setting where you might be working with children and focusing on perhaps communities, going out to different communities and supporting them. You may decide to work in a hospital setting, for example, with adults. So that's three areas that you may end up working in. In terms of speech pathology as a career, there's areas, so you might decide that you want to specialise, for example, in a particular area of clinical practice. You may perhaps go down more of a management side where you're involved in perhaps managing a team of other allied health professionals and go through the health system or community system that way. You may think about perhaps developing or managing your own private practice in the future as well. Or you may think about other areas such as consultation, because we develop sort of broad skills learning about communication as well. Would you like to add anything to that, Leah, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good overview. I guess the things I would add is that, Belinda's been mentioning that we're quite future focused with this program as well, and we're very aware that our profession is changing quite a lot, and that means our graduates are going into a whole range of different areas after their course. And two of the really big ones that are coming up as emerging sort of employers are the disability sector, and that's particularly because of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And even if you're not employed in a specific disability organisation, you will find that there are a number of clients who come to you who might have funding from the NDIS, so you're working with that profile of client as well. And the other area that's emerging is the aged care sector as well. And we're finding that speech pathologists are moving into that area more and more. And another one, that we're sort of still keeping an eye on and is evolving in our context is also schools as well. So in New South Wales, our education system doesn't directly employ speech pathologists, but it's an area that we get contracted into very, very regularly to support speech and language and communication for children in both primary and high school. So huge diversity of areas, and you can change throughout your career. So it's not like you go into one area and that's where you'll stay for however long you're in your career. You can move around and have different experiences as well.
Great, thank you for that. So the second question we have here is in regards to admission for the course. So someone has asked what would be the GPA required or considered competitive if they're looking at applying for the course. So unfortunately, we don't have a set GPA to say this is what you need to get to be gaining entry to the course. So the applications are assessed on a case-by-case basis and how many people apply and how competitive their applications are. Obviously, if you do have a higher GPA towards a distinction, high distinction average, that's obviously looking quite competitive, but unfortunately don't have that exact number to say. But yeah, obviously trying to just really work hard in your semester, improve your GPA. And for example, if you don't gain entry, for 1 year, you can then do another semester and try and boost up your GPA again, and then looking at applying. So it's not you apply once and it's over, you can still work towards that. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Lauren. And perhaps we could add that with our current group of students, we've got a really lovely mix there. So we have a mix of school leavers, for example, some students who have been studying elsewhere, perhaps at Western Sydney University or another university, and have transferred to our program. And we also have a group of students who perhaps studied quite some time ago and have come into our program as well. So not immediate school leavers.
Great, thank you. So we have another question and they've asked, what are the core subjects for first year and what is the ratio of face-to-face lectures to online tutorials?
I can start off with that. So our year is broken up into 2 sessions. So we have an autumn session, which is the equivalent of semester 1, and then a spring session, which is the equivalent of semester 2. So in autumn, you do 3 of the core interprofessional units, and that's population Population Health and Society, I believe it's called. It's professional health competencies, so foundational skills in being a health professional. You've got your first human anatomy and physiology unit, and then you have a dedicated speech pathology unit, which we call Introduction to Speech Pathology. Then in your second year, you go on to do a unit called Communication in Health, so communicating as a health professional. There's another unit called Introduction to Research and Evidence-Based Practice. So that starts us thinking about looking at the evidence in the health professions and also in your discipline specifically. Human Anatomy and Physiology 2, so that continues on. And then we have a speech pathology unit called Communication and Mealtime Foundations, where we really start to get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to be a speech pathologist and the areas that we're covering. I think the second part of the question needs a pre-COVID answer and a COVID answer. So the way that our course is typically designed is that in the first year, it's pretty much all face-to-face time. So we have face-to-face lectures in your autumn session, face-to-face tutorials. So in fact, all of your learning happens with an educator and with your peers. And then we have online supporting materials through what's called Views, which is the online platform that we use. In the second session, we go to a model where we provide a pre-recorded lecture to listen to and some activities to prepare for coming to the tutorial. And then we hold a face-to-face tutorial and a face-to-face practical session. And many of the other units that you'll be involved in that are the interprofessional units will have a very, very similar model. Obviously, COVID is a little bit different. So all of our teaching has moved online. But certainly in speech pathology, what that now looks like is that we are doing Zoom live classrooms like this. So it's not that you just watch videos and do some activities by yourself. You actually log in to your 2-hour tutorial and we run that tutorial pretty much as we normally would. So live and with lots of participation. It just happens that you're not in the same room. So we're looking forward to hopefully next year going back to our pattern of really being there in the classes with you and having the interaction that we really value in speech pathology.
Great, thank you. So we've got some quite a few more questions coming through. I'll just see which one we have here. So we've got a interesting question. Do we learn sign language for speech pathology?
Aha! This is a pet area of mine, actually. So my clinical background is in the disability sector, and the clients that I worked with, we do a lot of alternative methods of communication. So in speech pathology and in our course, we'll be learning what's called keyword sign. So keyword sign is not a full sign language, it's not Auslan, but it is based on the signs of Auslan, and it's been specifically designed for people who have communication difficulties. So in our unit in third year called Communication Access in Communities, we'll actually be embedding an industry qualification called the Keyword Sign Basic Workshop into our study, so that's an extra qualification that you will come out with and be competitive in the workforce. It's not to say that students can't go and do additional studies in Auslan or other, sign languages or other areas if they wish. But the keyword sign is certainly a skill that we find gets used across lots of different areas of speech pathology.
Great, that's very interesting.
Too, Leah, that we have that real focus within our program on multimodal communication. Yeah. So, across the board. So even, for example, with working with adults, if because my clinical background is actually in stroke rehabilitation. So have had a lot of experience working with adults, for example, after stroke, but also after traumatic brain injury. And one way that we communicate is verbally, but of course, as you can see, I like to use my hands, and gesture is another way that we communicate. But we're often really working, with an individual, with their family, to work out how can that person effectively, convey the messages that they need to, whether it be immediately after, quite a severe stroke or accident, or even sort of longer term, looking at what's available for them. And sometimes that might be something low tech that may involve, for example, developing a really functional sort of communication book or picture board for people, or sometimes it might be, you know, involving something that's higher technology as well.
Great. So this is, I suppose, a personal question about your guys, your background. So someone has asked, how did you both become doctors in speech pathology?
So shall I start?
You can go ahead, Belinda, absolutely.
Okay. So there's different types of doctors. So I'm not a medical doctor as such. A doctor means that I have gone through and done a PhD. So basically, in my career, I studied speech pathology. I graduated, and then I developed, you know, a real interest in the research, and particularly, you know, clinically related research. So I went back to university then and embarked on a program of completing a PhD. The area that I'm actually really passionate about is ethical practice and ethical reasoning in health sciences. So my PhD actually explored the nature of ethical dilemmas that speech pathologists experience in their everyday practice. And then I looked at the strategies that both new graduates who have just finished university and then more experienced speech pathologists who have been working for a number of years, how they actually go around managing those ethical dilemmas to ensure that they provide quality care, and also, I guess, you know, share the resources that are available in a really fair way, cope when there's sometimes some conflict or some difference of opinion about perhaps the best way forward with the treatment plan, those sort of issues. So after completing that PhD, that's how I ended up being a doctor in speech pathology.
And my pathway was quite similar. So after graduating, I worked as a speech pathologist for nearly 5 years. And then I had a lovely honours supervisor who kept staying in touch with me year after year and sending me things like, oh, look, here's a PhD scholarship. Are you interested in doing further study yet? And I'd say, no, I'm being a clinician right now. But eventually I sort of thought, you know what, yep, I'm ready to go on and do some further study. And because I had a first class honours, that meant I could go straight into a PhD, but many people choose to do a master's first and then articulate up to a PhD later on in their career. My area was, as I was working in disability, I was looking at the topic of grief and loss for adults with cerebral palsy as they aged, and it was specifically adults with cerebral palsy who couldn't speak but actually used alternative methods of communication. And that is usually a 3-year program, 3-year PhD program. It can often extend out a little bit, 3 to 4 years, and you're required to design your research project, implement your research project, and then of course write it up, which is usually in the form of a thesis that's about that thick, and you can use it as a doorstop, they're that big. Or now more and more people are writing publications, so they're putting together their thesis and their PhD findings in the form of journal articles that they then get published. So yeah, that was my journey, and then I became similar to Belinda, a doctor, doing a doctorate, so not a medical doctor.
I think it's a really good question, though, and I think perhaps, you know, I should have mentioned that earlier when the question came up about career pathways. Of course, that an academic pathway is another way that you could think about as well. So I know certainly when I graduated, I had no intention of going back to university and being an academic. It was the last thing on my mind. I wanted to get out there and I wanted to use my clinical skills and work with people. But sometimes over time you do develop a real interest in research, and that's what sort of brought me back to the university setting. And then eventually I always enjoyed teaching students, so I did a lot of work in clinical education, supervising students on clinical placement, and so that's how I became more and more involved in that academic side of speech pathology. But research and academia is another career pathway that you may think about as well, and that's why we're offering that honours stream as well, to give people a bit of a taste of research that's very well supported by ourselves, so that you can see what's it like to be involved in research, to have the skills to run a research project. And some people may immediately then think, look, this is the pathway that I want to go. But other people, as Leah said, you have that honours, and then you hold on to that, and then along the track think, no, I think now I may be ready to think about some other options.
Thank you for that, ladies. So you guys can obviously see they are very experienced in the field and do have quite a fair few qualifications. So you're in very good hands if you do gain entry to the course, having these ladies as your teachers. Someone has asked similar in regards to kind of career path in speech pathology. Do you recommend doing a master's on top of the bachelor degree? Would having a master's degree increase my pay bracket as a speech pathologist?
That's a good question as well, and it's a good thing to be thinking about. It's also a hard one to answer because there's not really any sort of hard and fast rules about how these things work. So often it is about your competence in the field, your personal sort of traits as well that can lead to different opportunities within your career. Having a master's is a great thing to do if, as Belinda was mentioning, you are interested in research and actually contributing new and novel findings to the profession of speech pathology. There are coursework masters that you can do that complement the speech pathology field, or you can do a Masters of Philosophy, which is a research-based postgraduate qualification. And that really allows you to focus in on a more specialised area of speech pathology, as was mentioned before, and actually start to contribute to the evidence. Again, it's an important step if you're thinking of moving through a more sort of academic pathway, or if in your clinical career you're wanting to take more leadership of things like quality improvement projects or evaluations of services and things like that in your actual sort of clinical settings. Whether it's a guaranteed sort of causal link between a higher pay grade is very, very difficult to say, but it's a very valuable skill set to have and a very marketable and transferable one within our profession.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that as speech pathologists, we never stop learning. So once you've graduated, for example, you'll find that Speech Pathology Australia, our national association, they offer a number of different, continuing professional development courses that you can look at as well, and conferences. There's a number of specific speech pathology interest groups, which are professionals who may be interested in a particular area of practice. So there's a number of different ways of continuing to develop your knowledge and your skills after you've graduated. The Masters is one approach, and certainly research, and obviously you'll develop and really consolidate skills there, but there are other options for you as well.
Great. So someone has asked, over the 4 years, at what time of the year does the course run? So I suppose you guys are interested in knowing. Apologies for that. They're asking in regards to the structure and, when classes start, when you guys have breaks. So we have, and I think the ladies touched on this previously, but we do have what's called the autumn and the spring session. So the autumn session would start usually the first week of March, and that runs up to around June time period. And then we usually have 2 weeks of exam periods, and then you guys have about a month's break, and then you would come back for the spring session in August, and that would then run to roughly around November. Then you'd have your 2-week time period for exams if you have them in the course, and then you if you don't do summer school, you have quite a big break, and then you come back to study the year after. So I'm not sure, do you ladies offer units in the summer sessions?
No, at this stage we don't have any discipline or speech pathology specific units that run in the summer, but some of the core interprofessional units can be taken in the summer period. So in my role as academic course advisor, I am happy to talk to students who are wanting a little bit of flexibility in that first year of the course to bring things forward or hold things over, and there is a little bit of wiggle room with those core units, not so much with the speech pathology specific units. Probably just to add to that as well, that in third year, our timeframes change a little bit to accommodate the needs of our clinical program. So whilst our academic units will still run in autumn, so March to June, our placements will actually run from January to July, and then again August to December. So from third year onwards, do need a little bit more flexibility in terms of your availability to go on placement. And we allocate those placements to you based on what's available from our industry partners. So we do need people ready to uptake those placements and go to those.
Great, thank you for that. Some other questions in regards to the job. So is there a demand for speech pathology? How difficult would it be to find a job as a speech pathologist? And someone has also, in conjunction with that question, asked how challenging is the course and the job itself?
Wow, that's a few questions, isn't there?
Sorry, we can break them up. Apologies.
No, they're all good. So perhaps we can start, Lauren, and if we miss out any little bits, you can prompt us a little bit along the way. So I'll start by saying certainly speech pathology is very much in demand. Given the nature of our work that we have, and demand with both working, with children. Leah also mentioned the NDIS, so disability being another area where there's a big demand for speech pathology services, and also with our adults and aged care as well. So yes, it is a profession in demand, and we're expecting that will continue at this stage. So in terms of finding a job, that's a very reasonable question. After 4 years, you're really wanting to have a job. And the answer there is that really that's around, I guess, the level of flexibility that you have. So if you're very determined, for example, say you absolutely loved a placement in stroke rehabilitation at Campbelltown Hospital, for example, and you think, look, that's the only area that I want to work in. I really just want to work in hospitals. Well, then sometimes it can take a little bit longer, for those positions to become available. If you're a little bit more flexible and you think, look, there's a lot of things about speech pathology that I really love. I would really enjoy, working with people with a disability. I'd certainly be interested in working in a private practice, for example, as well as health. Obviously, there your options, there are a lot wider, and there's a lot more positions that become available. The other thing as well is that Speech Pathology Australia often places up positions that are available, and they may also include what we call locum positions. So that may also be perhaps where there's a speech pathologist who has taken leave for 6 to 12 months. And our graduates who are a little bit flexible and will think, look, I'll be prepared to take on one of those locum experiences and to get some experience, again, are much more likely to find positions earlier. Same with our graduates who will consider rural careers. There's some fabulous positions available in rural settings, and students who go on placements to rural settings will often comment about the fact they're so warmly welcomed into the community, and they have such a diverse range of clinical experiences. They see it as a real strength. So again, if you're very determined on, and that this could be because of your circumstances, that you need to work within the sort of city or metropolitan area, yes, there'll be that certain level of competition for roles. If you're willing to travel a little bit further afield, again, the likelihood is that you'll be able to have a position a lot more quickly. But overall, I can say that there is a big demand.
Maybe I can answer the second question, which was about how challenging is the course. And again, very, very fair question. We have to be realistic, and I would like to think that the course is challenging. Absolutely. We are preparing you to be professionals, specialists in the area of communication and swallowing. And Speech Pathology Australia, as our national organisation and also our accrediting body, wants to know that when you graduate, you've got the skills to do that job well. So it becomes our job to make sure that we're giving you the learning that you need to develop those skills, and also that we're giving you the types of assessment tasks that let you demonstrate your knowledge and your acquisition of really important skills as well. So whilst there are challenging aspects to the program, The other side of that is, though, that we've put a lot of time and attention into developing the learning so that it is supportive of you as well. So the whole design of our program is about what we call iterative skill building. So you start with foundational skills, and then in the next year you come back and you revisit some of those core skills before adding to those in more depth. So we provide what we call a lot of scaffolding and support for that skill development. So hopefully the course is challenging but not difficult in such a way that it becomes a barrier for you completing it.
And Western Sydney University does offer a lot of supports as well for our students. So Leah and I are both very committed to supporting our students. We certainly make ourselves available for meetings, for example, with individual students on a really regular basis, so that there's an opportunity for you to talk about how you're going, and whether you know, if you do find that you need a little bit of extra help or support, we can help you to go in the right direction for that. And Western obviously as well has a number of different services available, I think, and are very proactive in encouraging students and helping students to stay engaged with the university community, which is important, that you feel part of us as speech pathology, but also part of the university as well.
Okay, so on to a couple of more questions that we have. This is kind of a collaborated answer. A few people have asked in regards to if you don't receive, say, the ATAR requirement, or you don't gain entry directly into speech pathology, what would be kind of a good pathway to go about, potentially gaining entry if there would be an appropriate course that might have some similar units? Would you ladies know of any?
Yeah, absolutely. So good question. I guess because of the nature of our first year program, with having lots of those core interprofessional units, there are a number of different courses in the health sciences that have those units in common. So, for example, you could do maybe a Bachelor of Health Sciences if you didn't quite get the ATAR for speech pathology. So come into that sort of first year of the Bachelor of Health Science, and you'll find that many, but not all, units are in common there. So if you then built up a really strong GPA and then wanted to transfer in the next year, you'd find you could get some advanced standing for things that you've completed. Other similar courses, for example, like occupational therapy, that's often quite closely aligned in that first year as well. I think we do need to be really honest and realistic and say that doing a first year in another course will not then allow you to come into, for example, the second year of the speech pathology program. So what this will effectively be is your first year of study, but then still 4 years of speech pathology on top of that. And that's about how the program is designed and how our prerequisite units run. But it does mean that you'll have some flexibility in each of your sessions to reorganise some of your units and perhaps not necessarily have a full load in those first couple of years if that's your pathway. So yes, there are definitely options, and that's the type of thing that Belinda and I are happy to be contacted about offline and outside of this forum to discuss with you. It's very easy now to set up a Zoom meeting and actually have those chats with you in person.
Great, thank you for that. And someone has asked, are you able to complete your placement overseas?
Right, yes, that's a very good question, and I was just thinking about that. Look, certainly at Western Sydney, we know that there are some options for completing experiences overseas, for example. So that certainly may be an option for you. In terms of a placement, that's a little bit more complex. So what we would need to look at is, I guess, where you were at in terms of the course. We would need to, because our students are assessed with a national assessment tool, and we need to show that they're competent. So anywhere that you had a placement, we would need to make sure that the speech pathologists there who were supervising you were able to use that particular assessment tool to evaluate your skills, because we'd still want at the end that you would be competent and able to work, eligible to be able to work in Australia. So I'm not saying no to an overseas placement. It may be more complex to organise, and it may be that there would be some benefits to you to doing your placements here in Australia. You could certainly look at some rural placements and some quite, different type of placement experiences over here, and perhaps look at other sort of overseas experiences as well to complement your work as a speech pathologist.
Thank you. That's very interesting to know. So another question regarding, I suppose, the application. Someone's asked, are there any adjustment factors or bonus points available to help me gain entry and achieve the required ATAR? Unfortunately, I did mention this earlier, we don't allow for adjustment factors or bonus points towards the speech pathology application. For other courses or pathway courses you may choose to apply for. So for example, if you may not achieve the ATAR requirement for speech pathology, but you do decide to maybe apply for a Bachelor of Health Science, those bonus points and adjustment factors are applicable. So if you're a high school student, you may receive those bonus points based on living in Greater Western Sydney, whether that be your home address or going to school in Greater Western Sydney, or through subject bonus points. So if you perform quite well in related subjects such as maybe PDHPE, biology, receive usually around a band 5, that's usually when you can receive those adjustment factors. The maximum amount that you can receive in your application is 10. And unfortunately, that's just the limit we have. And for mature age students or non-current school leavers that are applying, unfortunately, you don't get those subject band results. They are only applicable to our high school students. But if you live in Greater Western Sydney, you are still entitled to those 5 bonus points. So therefore, other courses such as health science, Bachelor of Health Science, Sport and Exercise Science, but unfortunately, it isn't applicable for speech pathology. Okay, so I'm just having a quick skim to see if there are any more questions. So we do have another one asking if you were to complete your degree in speech pathology and wish to use your degree in education, is it another 1.5-year postgraduate degree you would require to complete, or are there additional requirements?
So I'll just clarify that question. So I'm hearing that you maybe have already completed a degree in education and are wanting to come and do another qualification in speech pathology.
Or is it the other way around?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. Alex, I think that question came from you. If you would just be able to reply on the chat, just so we can clarify that for you. Okay, I might just wait for Alex to reply, and once we get a reply, we might come back to that question.
No worries.
Okay. Looks like we have covered most of them. Oh, we do have one in regards to how large are the class sizes, which I think you ladies may have touched on before, but if you were just able to maybe expand on that a little bit more.
Sure, yes, yeah. So, yes, so, at the moment, as Leah said, we're looking at sort of a total class size of just over 60 students, for example. But we do a lot of smaller group work. So we do have some full classes that we have for our lectures, but then we will also, for example, have tutorials which will have approximately 25 students in them, and same with our practical classes. So there's lots of opportunities within those sessions to be working within those smaller groups where we really get to know you. You can have a lot more, I guess, practical support. And even within those 25 group sessions at the moment, as Leah mentioned, we're in our COVID sort of time frame and framework of needing to do online. But even within those 25, say, student groups, we will often have what we would call breakout groups. So small groups of students working together, for example, and we will go around to each of those groups and support those students learning. So none of those sort of 300 plus classes that you hear about in some courses at all. We're quite a small cohort, which I think is lovely. It means that we can really get to know all of our students and their needs.
Thank you for that. So I think we are just about out of time. If there were any other questions, feel free to maybe jot them down quickly if you're able in the chat. But ladies, did you have anything that you'd like to finish off with before the session ends?
I'd just really like to thank people for raising all the questions this morning. I think that they've been fabulous questions and really show the interest. I think I'd really encourage you to really think about speech pathology as a career. I hope you found that the information this morning helpful in guiding your thinking about your career choice.
Yeah, and I just reiterate that, and I'd just say that we're a very welcoming program, I think, and hopefully very approachable people. So at any time, if you've got additional questions, we'd love to hear from you, and very happy to have a chat to support your journey, hopefully, towards speech pathology or another health science profession.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your contributions today, ladies. They have been excellent and very informative. And hopefully we've been able to answer all the questions for you guys today. If you do have any other sessions, best of luck. But thank you for attending our open day session today, and best of luck with your future studies and your applications.